Hello and welcome to another week's analysis behind the news. World news has been ablaze for the last 2 weeks with the plight of Syrian migrants seeking refuge in Europe. Many have been traveling northwest through Turkey and then into the EU, as well as south and west, eventually traversing the Mediterranean Sea. Yet, the Wall Street Journal reports that some refugees are heading through Russia, up into the Arctic Circle and then down through Norway for a safer route. Some have documented only a 3-day journey from Syria to Norway via this route. Now certainly Russian authorities must know this is being done. Granted, the paper reported that only 150 refugees have gone this way, compared to the 500,000 that have applied for asylum since the beginning of the year. However, this is only what is being reported. How many have come through that are not reported? And who are these migrants, and why would Russia permit this? Allow us to speculate and extend the lines for a moment. Western civilization has traditionally been seen as that of great progress, particularly stemming from industrial means to create wealth at an individual level, with advancements following in society. And how has Russia viewed the West within the last century? Ultimately, as an obstacle to be overcome by any means necessary. Western civilization has provided for the attainment of freedom, the promotion of liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the self-restraint of morality. Millions have sought and worked toward achieving their dreams within Western civilization. And one could argue that opposing forces have been fighting against this since the establishment of Western civilization. Indeed, since the Garden of Eden and the battle between good and evil. And what would the decline and eventual destruction of Western civilization mean? That those seeking to escape tyranny to create a better life for themselves and their families would have nowhere to go, and that a new tyranny on a global scale would have taken hold. History has demonstrated that great migrations to a specific area have resulted in a shift of the country's voting demographics. This can have serious implications when those migrants come from despotic governments whose politics are diametrically opposed to the countries they move into. And understanding that a country's government directly reflects the electorate and its wishes, could it be that Russia would encourage these mass migrations to the West in order to see great destabilization? Syria isn't the only country that has a large amount of migrants fleeing it. So do Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan. And as the New American reports, the overwhelming majority of the refugees heading into Europe and being resettled in the United States by the UN and President Obama come from a handful of nations that share one common trait: destruction and bloodshed wrought by recent interventions by Western globalists under some false pretenses. It also goes on to report, whether deliberately supporting Islamic terrorist groups and leaving the Middle East in ruins was calculated to produce the tidal wave of suffering refugees remains unclear at this point. It is certainly not far-fetched, considering the decades of globalist and communist support for terrorism, tyranny, and even mass murder, often as a means to an end. But the fact that the Obama administration, the U.S. government, the United Nations, the EU, European national governments, and allied Sunni Arab dictators created these crises is beyond dispute. And so is the fact that they are exploiting the disasters they created to advance multiple agendas, as the New American has been documenting for years. Of course, one of these agendas is the further erosion of sovereign national governments. Watch what happens to the discussions surrounding the upcoming transatlantic trade and investment partnership. You can bet that this manufactured immigration crisis will be used as an excuse to further what the establishment calls free trade agreements. You're encouraged to visit thenewamerican.com to learn more, as well as visit jbs.org for tools on how you can stop the free trade agenda. As we mentioned last week, our newest issue of The New American, Police Under Fire, has now been published. It's our special report that exposes the agenda to create a national police using communist strategy from the 1960s. You'll find articles that document the strategy of pressure from above and pressure from below, as discussed last week. You'll also learn how the federal government is coercing local police to follow federal edicts, how the office of sheriff is critical in standing up to the feds, the truth about police brutality, an examination of the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as a frank discussion regarding gun control written by Larry Pratt of Gun Owners of America. At the end, our CEO, Arthur Thompson, discusses what you can do to maintain your local police. Don't like the direction your police are heading in? Change it. Many will argue that it is too late to do anything. Instead, get involved. Form or support your local police committee to support the good and work with local and state decision makers to change the not so good. Until next week, we'll see you then.